USC and Oregon have decided they're writing fat checks to chase national championships. How will other teams in the Big Ten respond, like Indiana and Penn State? We talk about that right now.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in. It is a Locked On College crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Zach Seyko, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. We come together once a week to talk all things Big Ten, how it impacts Indiana, how it impacts Penn State, it impacts college football as well. So thank you so much for being here, making our shows your first listen each and every day, and for making Locked On the nation's #1 sports podcasting network. Want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Well, yesterday was National Signing Day, so we're going to talk a little bit about those recruiting classes for Penn State, which is brand new, Indiana that's trying to build off a national title. Plus, we'll have the debate. Portal or high school kids? Which one really means you're going to win a national championship? But speaking of championships, Zach Seyko, USC and Oregon, according to On3, have decided they're breaking out the checkbooks.
They're desperate.
Blank checks. They're desperate. They will do anything to compete and win a national championship. Indiana probably didn't help that fact, and I would say USC probably more desperate than Oregon right now. But what do you make of this, that those two programs in particular are basically going to do whatever it takes to win it all?
Well, and we're going to answer that right out of the gate, that what is Penn State? What is Indiana? What are other teams going to do that can't spend this kind of money? Exactly what Indiana did. Good coaching, good player development, cohesiveness. It's all there. You don't need to be – it helps. Money certainly helps. And Indiana now is not broke. Penn State is not broke. So I think of Purdue, right? Those schools that are always going to have an uphill battle here. Okay. But even, hey, we see Vanderbilt in the SEC. This is more than just the Big Ten, right? Oregon and USC, I say, are desperate because, and the ROI is not good. Yeah. You are not getting a return on your investment here. So I'm eager to see how this is going to play out this season, because Oregon, I think, does have a national title window. Will it actually translate? USC, though, I worry about this for Lincoln Riley. I really do. Because if you don't win, I guess Lincoln Riley benefits at the end of the day. It just means
he's going to get paid.
Yeah, it just means USC. So he gets an early retirement, a paid vacation, and USC is on the hook for but do they even care? Do they even care? Because they're willing to throw this kind. It's the same thing with Texas Tech. Texas Tech was, we're talking about this On3 article here that named some of the biggest spenders in college football because they interviewed a bunch of anonymous general managers. USC came up a ton, actually. It seemed like they were referred to the most. And then Oregon, Texas Tech, Miami, Texas A&M. No surprise. But what I find intriguing is that USC is all in right now for this upcoming season.
But of those names and the teams and the organizations that you mentioned and those general managers mentioned again in the On3 article, of those teams, man, for me personally, USC is the least of my concern. I'm worried about Oregon long term.
That didn't scare me at all. Oh, USC spending money, good for them.
Okay, they've spent money all the time, and guess what? They haven't won in quite some time. Do you think that's a USC problem, a Lincoln Riley problem, maybe a little bit of both? Because I can't get a read on what they want in Southern California, but I'm not worried at all that they're spending more money than anybody, at least in the 2026 recruiting class.
It's strange, right? USC hasn't really been this powerhouse of a team since Pete Carroll? Yeah. We're talking early, mid-2000s at the latest. And I know, okay, well, remember those games? Yes, I do remember those games against Penn State when they met in the Rose Bowl. They were not fun. But USC hasn't been this consistent powerhouse, a liken to Ohio State at this point. Right. You don't even say Ohio State wasn't even mentioned all that much. And you would think, because they're Texas. You would think that those Notre Dame was allegedly in this group. I think this is for the 2026 season with respect. And like I said, it means that USC is going all in. Well, Texas Tech has that retired, but he sold shares in his company to fund Texas Tech football. That's what we're getting at. And it's going to raise your floor, but does it raise your ceiling? No, it doesn't. It'll make you a more competitive team. You'll be able to just purely win games against mid to below average teams, because that's what money can do. But money can't put you in the championship game.
Yeah.
Okay. It gets you 10-2. Hey, I mean, look at Texas Tech. That's the formula. They beat up on all those Big 12 teams, and they played somebody with a pulse. They lost. So
goes back to the quote that I always say, Zach, because you hear it all the time. It's more of a video game term, but it's pay to win, right? You just paid your way to the top. You bought all the weapons, you bought all the tools, you bought your way to the end of the video game and you beat it. You hear that all the time, pay to win. And people try to use that in college athletics. And I say, no, it's not pay to win. It's pay to compete. You can pay to compete in college athletics, but you still have to have the coaching. You still have to have the alignment, right? From the top to the bottom, from the left to the right. You still have to have the buy-in from things not monetarily. All of those things have to come together. And for a unit like Oregon, I think they can do that. I think Dan Lanning is the guy to make that happen in Eugene. I'm not banking on Lincoln Riley and USC. Well, there is that. Yeah, so maybe the alignment isn't there. I don't know.
We saw how that worked with Dabo Swinney and Clemson. They haven't been the same since he's had to replace coordinators.
That's true. But I guess I would put my dollars on Oregon winning a national championship years before I would put money on USC winning a national championship. That's what I'm getting at is I think USC could spend all the money in the world, but I don't think they win. That's mainly because I don't think Lincoln Riley's the guy, but that's just my opinion. In college athletics, though, I say pay to compete, not pay to win. And that's what these two teams are trying to do in the Big Ten right now.
I mean, I think Lincoln Riley is just a better version of what James Franklin was at Penn State. He could recruit better. But as a game day coach, right? And James Franklin beat USC and Lincoln Riley in their stadium on game day. So that's what I think, because I take into account what he did at Oklahoma, but he never got them past the semifinal. And it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't be throwing stones because James Franklin and Penn State never got past the semifinal either, and never made the 14 playoff, right? At least Lincoln Riley did. It's also in the Big 12, right? That was before Oklahoma joined the SEC, just saying, right? And then he goes to USC, and then they join the Big 10. So he can recruit, but in-game coaching, player development is good, right? He seems to be a quarterback whisperer, but it doesn't translate into those elite wins. Again, USC is still that was the team that could have and probably should have made the college football playoff as an at-large last season, and you go on the road and you lose to Illinois. We saw what Illinois was. So it is a Lincoln Riley problem. They are not devoid of talent. They are not devoid of resources, clearly. Yeah. Right? You can make the case for Matt Campbell. Hey, Matt Campbell doesn't have the resources. That's why Iowa State was middle of the road at times in the Big 12. But he was able to punch above his weight class. Remind me the last time Lincoln Riley punched above his weight class.
I got nothing. And I'm with you. That's why.
Case closed.
Boom. That's it. That's all you have to say. So they could spend all the money they want, but you got to find guys who can win you football games. USC and Oregon are spending that big dollars, and those big dollars, I should say, but that's in the high school recruiting rankings. Is that still the path to victory, or have we seen the transfer portal become king? We talk about that right after this on this Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukelich and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, welcome back into this Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions. He is Zach Seyko, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins, the host of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana and Penn State athletics. And hopefully you've started to come here for some general Big Ten conversations as well. We're having a ton of fun with these crossovers, and we have more to talk about because based off of the article we were discussing, Zach, of USC and Oregon spending more money than anybody in high school recruiting, is it worth it? You mentioned ROI in the previous segment, and that is a very popular term. It's a very popular acronym that people continue to come back to, right? Your return on investment. And I think the argument has already been happening in Indiana is a big reason why. Is the ROI worth it more in high school recruiting or transfer portal recruiting? That is the $1 million question, or $1 million is nothing. How about the $1 billion question? Billion with a B. Is it portal or high school? Which one wins you championships?
It's both. I would say it's a mix of both because you look at teams in the NFL, right? They draft. High school recruiting is the equivalent of an NFL draft. And then free agency is the equivalent of the portal. And you need to be able to do both. I would still default now, okay, I don't think that it's necessarily a 50-50 split because sometimes you might need a little more portal. For the most part, I would still default to recruiting. So I'm going to say you have your base in high school recruiting, but use the portal as much as you need. I think playing free agency, portal free agency year in and year out is not a winning formula because you'll have no team chemistry, you'll have no foundation, you have no base.
Yeah.
And you still need that foundational aspect, and then you go get the complementary pieces. You're putting a puzzle together, you use the portal to get the remaining pieces. So I'm still going to side with high school recruiting, but the value of the portal is you can't recruit your way out of an inconsistency, right? A player gets hurt towards the end of the season, or you know that you're going to lose a ton of players to the draft, or guys are going to portal out. You can go and recover from those losses quickly in the portal. Mm-hmm. You can't do that in recruiting. Good luck trying to get an immediate impact from how many true freshmen, right? Well, that's why it's cool when true freshmen make an instant impact in their first year because it's not supposed to happen routinely. So the portal in Indiana to get it going, they use the portal, but now you see how they're starting to focus more on recruiting now that things have settled down. So you can go one way or another, but notice how Indiana has defaulted back. And the players they got out of the portal weren't one player from here, one player from there. They were guys that Curt Cignetti already recruited. So does that even count? Right? I'm still going to side with high school recruiting.
Yeah, at least in year one. I think this past season, you were able to put bits and pieces together and go and get some guys like Fernando Mendoza, right, from Cal and things like that. But you bring up an interesting point with Indiana, who had to start from ground zero when Cignetti and his staff and company showed up because there was nothing here. That's where the portal is so intriguing to me. And I think a benefit for, take Penn State, for example. There was a lot of talent, but you also had a lot of talent leaving. Matt Campbell was able to step in and bring a bunch of his guys with him, go out about and get whoever they needed, and you can get better faster with the transfer portal. That's what I like. But I don't want any team, especially mine, to just rely on the transfer portal for the next decade plus. I understand in the first couple of years of a regime, you have to. You don't have a choice if you want to compete and not just get railed. Indiana is now trying to focus on building high school rankings, building those relationships, right, in the state of Indiana, around the state of Indiana. Heck, we've got kids now from the state of Florida, California, and competing in Texas as well. Indiana is able to fly on the road, walk into a high school in the state of Florida and say, IU's here, want to come talk? And Google me. Exactly. So that's what's exciting for me, for the Indiana perspective anyway, is they're still building the high school class, but they'll always go and get portal kids. But here's what I think is important for any team in college football. You still focus on high school recruiting, but if you notice, on average, take the USC and the Oregons and the Texas Techs out of it, who are recruiting 35, 40 players a class in high school right now. The average recruiting class number, like the total of players, is going down. And I think it will continue to go down because of the transfer portal. So teams like Penn State, like Indiana, like Michigan, they will start loading up on offensive and defensive linemen. You get a quarterback every 2, 3, 4 years and pick up the best players in your area. That's pretty much going to be it. And Indiana and Penn State and all these other teams need to focus on that. And then you fill the gaps with the transfer portal. That's the formula for me.
It's always going to come down to coaching and scouting. And chemistry is important too. So Indiana kind of proved all these trends to be wrong or null and void or unimportant. If Texas Tech went out and won a national title, bought their way to a national title in this past season, I would have said, okay, you know what? I got nothing. It looks like you can spend your way all the way to the top. You can only get so far, in my opinion. Again, you read this On 3 article, and it's a shame that what we've come to, because
what with the amount?
Yes, the money, that's $2 million being thrown at a true freshman. Yeah. But also the amount of criticism. Poor Felix Ojo. I guess from what I've read, offensive tackle is going to go to Texas Tech because they overspent to get his commitment. Apparently he's no good, or that he's extremely overrated. You want to talk about ROI? The people, and again, I know they're behind anonymity and they're keeping their appearance concealed. But man, that's it. I'm reading that article and it's like, oh wow, they are really being pretty critical about somebody that's still in high school. But hey, I guess I got to get used to the territory, because these college athletes are being treated as professional athletes. So it is what it is.
But what's worse, is it paying $2 million to a freshman who's never played, or $5 million to a transfer portal quarterback for 1 year? Like that's the splitting hairs that we're at here. That's the difference. Pick your battle. Choose your demon. Choose your lesser of the two. Both of them are insane, in my opinion, Zach. That idea is so wild to me, but I always come back. You mentioned Texas Tech. If they had bought their way to a national title last year, or heck, even if they buy their way to one this coming season too, that might change the game forever. But I go back to Dabo Swinney at Clemson, right? For the other side of this argument, for a guy that when NIL and transfer portal was implemented and introduced and the floodgates opened because the NCAA was so bad and they couldn't handle it, he said, no, I'm not doing that. He said, I'm not paying my players. You can come play at Clemson because you want to. I'm not going to the portal. We recruit high school kids. Guess what? He gave in. Now they're in the portal. Now they're paying players because they were losing football games and they were being left behind with what was a prominent program in the 2010s. And so there's a fine line there. And I don't think there's a cookie cutter formula for every single program in college football. But for Indiana and other teams like us, they proved that it can be done your own way, but you have to have a mixture of the two, and coaching is a big reason for that.
Coaching, scouting, being able to evaluate and know who's going to fit your system the best. Okay. Yeah. If you see players in the portal, and that might be the instance there where you look at the portal, hey, this guy fits our defense. Go get him. If you have a spot for him, you don't just pass on some, well, we don't want to use the portal. See, that's where you almost limit yourself, is to say,
Yeah.
well, we're too good for the portal. We can't, I'm Dabo Sweeney. I can't use the portal. I'm going to recruit high school only. You don't know how some of those players are going to pan out at the end of the day. You have a
Yeah.
ton of tape. You know how they perform at the college level against other comparable talent for the most part, even if they're at a lower. Look at who Indiana brought in. Look at Trinidad Chambliss. Who you have a body of work. You can only tell so much through high school. So, but it's that self-righteousness of, well, we can't do it or we won't use it that much. Use it to where you need it. I still default to high school recruiting because I value chemistry. I value player development. The word commitment, I think, goes a longer way in this world, but don't use the portal just because you think you're too good for it.
Yeah, portal versus high school. It's a debate that is ongoing in college football, college athletics, really. But we're going to talk about the high school side of things because National Signing Day, yes, it happened, believe it or not. In case you forgot, it was this week. We talk about what Indiana and Penn State brought in for the class as a whole in our final segment right after this on this Locked On Crossover. Today's episode on this Locked On Crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions is brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of just hoping that the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria like skills and location and right certifications. That's why when you use Indeed, you're going to get people that actually fit your job description. It's not some rando. It's not somebody who just got fired yesterday, begging for a job today. These are people looking to get into the workforce and in your specific fields. That's what Indeed sponsored jobs is going to give you. That's why you need to be using them right now. Here's a stat that says it all. Okay. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed's data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time researching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listen to this show, or listeners of this show rather, will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way and do so with Indeed. This episode of a Locked On Crossover Hoosiers and Nittany Lions is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets to those events, though, yeah, that can be the hard part, and it's not really all that simple. But it can be if you use Game Time. And that's what I use because it's become my go-to app for scoring tickets fast without all the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with you, the fans. Look, I pull up the Game Time app all the time, not just for NBA games, but for concerts and for theater. I've gone to multiple different things, comedy shows as well. Game Time has it all. Plus, you see the price all in up front. There's no surprise fees. There's no jumping at checkout. What you see is what you pay. And the part that I love too, you can see the view from your seat in every arena before every show or every event, so you know exactly what you're paying, okay? And what you're getting when you get there. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com, gametime.co, and download the Game Time app today. All right, final segment on this Locked On Crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions as we continue talking portal and high school and just recruiting overall. And National Signing Day, Zach, has come and gone for the Hoosiers and the Nittany Lions. I'll start with you. Brand new staff, brand new recruiting class, brand new everything in Happy Valley. Tell us what we need to know about what the Nittany Lions did in the first recruiting class that Matt Campbell probably had to scrape up at the very last minute.
Then you said it perfectly. We'll take it, right? We will take, because on early signing day, Penn State has a worse class than, I don't know, pick somebody. It was funny. The schools that you have never heard of or don't pay attention to had more recruits, I think an actual football account, I should have jotted down notes for the receipts. Somebody said we have a better recruiting class. It might have been Columbia. Columbia said that they had a better recruiting class than Penn State at the time, or something. A prominent FCS, prominent subdivision 1 school was dunking on Penn State. And it's like, okay, well, get your jabs in, right?
Yeah, facts are facts. Yeah.
But Penn State and Matt Campbell, well, you did what you would expect them to do. They brought over a number of Iowa State commits, and that gives you something. Okay, it's better than 2 verbal commitments. It's better than 2 signees. It's much better. And they were able to move up, so they're not last in the Big Ten. They have 15 total commits. I like a couple of the prospects a ton that they got. Their 2 best prospects in this class are both edge defenders. They're both pass rushers. These guys can be really good. Maybe one of them is from the state of Pennsylvania, and he was one of those early signees in Jackson Ford. He's probably my favorite prospect in this class, but it's always still to be determined. These guys, they show flashes on film, tons of upside, but they don't do it enough consistently, or the high school recruiting rankings think, he's probably just going to be a depth player at some point in time. But you never know. We see prospects pan out differently all the time. Again, Trinidad Shameless transfers in and becomes a really good quarterback for Ole Miss and takes them to the semifinal. I'm never going to discount somebody just because they're a 3-star. Abdul Carter, for example, was more or less, he was a low-end 4-star, consensus 3-star for the most part, ended up being the number 2 overall selection in an NFL draft. So stars aren't the end all be all, but they are an indicator, right?
Yeah. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story, and stars and rankings are just numbers. That's just what they are. And so look, people took their jabs at Penn State, but everybody knew that they were going to bounce back and bring in recruits. And then once Matt Campbell has a year 1 at Penn State, then that will most likely jump back up, and the Nittany Lions will probably be in the top 10 of recruiting classes, as they usually are, because of the brand and the logo and the facilities and the money and the fan base and everything that Penn State has that makes it so great. Mm-hmm. But you got to win games too if you're Matt Campbell. On the flip side, for Indiana, right, we talked about a program that historically has been pitiful at high school recruiting. They haven't worried about it. They haven't focused on it, and they just got whatever they could scrounge up on the street because that was how Indiana was perceived. Now, as I've talked so much about Zach in the transfer portal, Indiana is now becoming a destination place for high school recruits too. And depending on what service you look at, right, Indiana for 2026, top 30, top 35 class in 2026, which is pretty solid because a lot of these guys committed and signed in the early period before Indiana actually won the national championship. And so the idea that you're able to get several 4-stars, a ton of 3-stars, still searching for a 5-star, but who cares? You don't need that nowadays. Indiana's winning titles without it. And what I love on this recruiting class, of the 19 guys that are currently enrolled plus 3 more who are expected to be as well, you have several different states that are represented in this class, which sounds silly to some, but it's a big deal in high school recruiting, man. Wisconsin, Maryland, Ohio, Illinois, Georgia, Wisconsin, Kentucky on here, Missouri on here. I mean, you have gone to Florida. I mean, you have picked up several big names out of several big states in high school recruiting, and Indiana can now walk in the door and be legit, be serious, and people actually want to sit down and talk to them or answer the phone when Curt Cignetti calls. And so for the Hoosiers, you're getting a bunch of defensive guys. You've got a couple of offensive stars coming in at receiver, and you're trying to just stack talent and slowly get better in your recruiting class as the years go on. And I think Indiana is in a really good spot. And so for Penn State, quickly, as we wrap up here, how important do you think year 1 is for Matt Campbell with success on the field to lead to better high school recruiting in the years to come?
And you don't want me to talk about Indiana's recruiting class? I had a couple points I wanted to make here.
Come on, lay it on me.
I'll finish with Indiana, right? I like what I see from this recruiting class. Of course, I don't know every single prospect inside and out and what they're going to do for the roster outlook for the Hoosiers, but they are now in the category of kind of what Penn State was with James Franklin, is that I noticed a number of prospects from Ohio, the state of Ohio, and a lot of those players, they naturally want to go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
But now you're seeing Indiana be that next school for them. So they might not have been recruited as much. I'm not saying that, oh, they're not good enough to get in Ohio State. No, that's not it at all.
Yeah.
But they don't want to be an afterthought. They know that they can play right away, or they just, I mean, Ohio State really gets first choice when it comes to Big Ten recruiting in these states. And actually a good amount of them would filter into Penn State. Indiana, at least right now, has kind of taken that spot, not necessarily away from Penn State. And Penn State, in theory, could get it back, but it means that Penn State and Indiana are probably going to go up against each other more a lot in these recruiting battles. Because if a player from Ohio, for example, or any of those Midwestern states doesn't get the call that they like from Ohio State, okay, well, remember, prospects pick schools too. they have their choice too. And it's the fact that they're choosing Indiana after maybe they don't go to their dream school. And again, these are players that are really good. It's not just because they get turned away from a bigger school. It's that they're going to Indiana as a first or second choice for prospects that you would consider elite. I like the way that in Indiana's classes are only going to get better. You see 30th on the national scale. They're going to continue to trend upward because they're here to stay. Indiana, you don't accidentally win the national title. They're here to stick around.
They are here to stay for quite some time, and we're excited to see it build at Indiana, and maybe it'll start to build over in Happy Valley as well. He is Zach Seyko, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins, the host of Locked On Hoosiers. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels. You follow us on your audio podcasting platforms, and turn on those notifications so you never miss new episodes of our shows. We are back tomorrow for normal episodes on Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Hoosiers. So until then, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.